They hurled garbage at her like she was some stray. Crumpled food packs, crusty leftovers, half-eaten protein blocks. And when she didn't flinch or grab at them, they laughed louder. This was Sector 9, a backwater labor camp orbiting the dead moon of Virex. The workers here, mostly ex-soldiers and political discards, were too burnt out from long drilling rotations to spare a thought for respect or decency. She huddled near a rusted perimeter gate, arms tight around her legs, knees poking through threadbare fabric. Her eyes, pale lavender, were wide but vacant. A faint glow traced her soft blue-tinted skin under the flickering utility lights. They called her Kay. Not because she told them her name. No one asked. No one cared. Technically, she wasn't detained. She hadn't been shackled or formally charged. But freedom? That word didn't mean much here. She'd arrived a few weeks earlier as part of a research envoy from her kind, the Aryans. Quiet, perceptive beings with advanced neural empathy. Her purpose had been peaceful: study interspecies commerce, observe human logistical structures. Then came the explosion. Someone had sabotaged the liquid oxygen processing station. They needed someone to blame, and she was alien, unknown, and silent. A perfect target. They didn't jail her. They just shoved her out of sight, past the HAB units, past the resource sheds, into the blind spots. They stripped her access card. No translator. No orientation. No quarters. Just told to stay out of the way. When she tried to explain, her soft dialect barely carried. No one made the effort to understand. So she sat, day after day, in that same spot. Watching others eat, watching their leftovers hit the dirt, watching herself fade away. Until someone did more than watch. His name was Damon Krell. Just another cog in the grinder. Early 40s. Worn down from 3 different wars and too many broken promises. The kind of man who fixed broken vents and didn't ask why they kept breaking. That night, after a brutal 16-hour shift in the mine shafts, he walked past her usual corner and paused. Something stopped him. Maybe it was her face, how still it was. Not sad. Not angry. Just quite too quiet for someone who was still alive. Inside the mess hall, it was the usual chaos. Tin trays scraping metal, laughter that never reached the eyes, synthetic bread and gray protein paste. Damon got his ration, picked his usual corner, alone. But he couldn't eat. Not while that face stayed etched in his thoughts. He stood, walked out into the cold, and found her again. Kay startled. She expected another slap of trash. Instead, Damon crouched low and set his tray down in front of her. "You don't have to sit out here," he said, voice low. "Eat with me." She didn't react at first. Her eyes darted between the food and his face. But when he nudged the tray gently closer, her fingers moved before her brain could stop them. One small bite, then another. Her shoulders trembled. She turned her face away to hide the tears. Damon didn't speak again. Just sat near her and drank water. That's where it began. Next cycle, he brought 2 trays. Sat beside her again. No words. No pressure. Just presence. It wasn't pity. It was something else. Maybe recognition. Maybe defiance. By the 3rd visit, others started noticing. "You shacking up with the blue thing now, Krell?" One guy snorted. Others joined in, juvenile and bitter. Damon ignored them. He just kept showing up. One day she reached out, lightly touched her chest. "Kay," she whispered. Then touched his arm. A question. He smiled faintly. "Damon." She echoed it back clumsily. "Close enough," he said. Over the next solar week, her body changed. She wasn't wasting away anymore. Color returned to her face. She stood up straighter. Her eyes held focus. Damon shared his portions. Sat with her on the gravel. Some workers sneered. A few looked away. But one man older, Merrick, sat beside them without a word and placed a boiled root chunk near her elbow. She nodded in gratitude. Damon smiled back. But not everyone appreciated the shift. Supervisor Grant, a thick-necked brute who liked rules more than people, cornered Damon near the incineration bay. "You feeding her 'cause you think she's pretty? Or 'cause you think she'll owe you?" Damon didn't blink. Because she's starving. She's not on the logs. Doesn't clock in. She's not part of this unit. She didn't blow up your tanks either. You don't know that. I know it wasn't her. She's leeching, Krell. You make the rest of us look soft. Damon squared his stance. Then maybe the rest of you should be softer. Later that night, someone knocked Kay's tray out of her hands. Crushed her food under a boot. She scrambled to pick it up, but it was ruined. Damon saw it happen. He didn't shout. Didn't threaten. Just handed her his entire ration the next day, sat down and ate nothing. Kay tried to push it back to him. He lifted a hand. No. Yours. Eat. She cried as she chewed. Then everything changed. The colony supervisor landed on site. News of the sabotage probe had reached upper command. Advanced scans came in. Logs were reviewed. Turns out, the attack came from a rogue human faction inside the base. Kay was never involved. Suddenly, she was offered everything. Access restored, living quarters, warm meals, a job in logistics. A formal apology. She declined. Instead, she returned to that same dusty bench beside Damon, same rations, same silence. Days later, they held a small gathering in her name. Someone activated a portable translator. She stepped forward. But she didn't talk about politics. Or the sabotage. Or what she'd lost. She looked at Damon. I wasn't invisible because I looked different, she said, voice clear through the translator. I was invisible because no one chose to see me. Then she lifted a piece of bread. Damon saw me. Damon fed me. Damon saved me. The crowd went still. Then Merrick clapped. Others followed. Before Damon transferred to another system, Kay met him at the transport bay. She pressed something into his hand, a tiny carved ring made of iridescent or etched with the Aryan symbol for shared heart. She looked up and said simply, family? He smiled. Tucked it away. You'll never eat alone again. Months later, across outposts and stations, the story spread of the alien girl who had been forgotten and the man who remembered her. Not because it was required, but because it was right. And in a universe growing colder by the cycle, that act stayed warm. In the end, it wasn't the scandal that left a mark on the colonies. It wasn't the sabotage or the investigation or the formal apology carved into government logs. It was something quieter. Something that couldn't be archived or processed or pinned to a bulletin board. It was a memory of one man who stopped when no one else did. Of a starving girl who stopped being invisible the moment someone saw her. Kay and Damon's story didn't change the galaxy overnight. Trade routes didn't open, war didn't end, hatred didn't vanish. But it sparked something beneath the surface. A quiet question that traveled system to system. What would happen if we really looked at the ones we pass by? In fringe settlements and mining belts, new protocols began to form. Translation devices were reissued to non-native workers. Outreach groups started checking the forgotten corners of compounds. Food shares were arranged without orders from above. No one said it was because of Kay. But those who had heard the story understood. And Damon? He never talked about it again. He moved on, station to station, doing the same hard work with the same tired hands. But everywhere he went, someone always came up to him quietly, a mechanic, a nurse, a tired officer, and offered an extra meal, or asked about Arians, or simply said, thank you. Kay stayed on Virex. She learned the language, helped rebuild, taught empathy seminars to new arrivals. She wasn't just a symbol anymore. She became the bridge she was always meant to be, not in theory, but in practice, one gesture at a time. And still, every week, she set 2 trays out in the dust and waited. Sometimes he showed up. Sometimes it was someone else. But there was always food. Always a place. Because in the void of deep space, where silence can feel infinite and loneliness burns cold, one small act of kindness is louder than any broadcast. And the ones who choose to see, they light the way.